Hey everyone, today we'll be learning two of the most common things players struggle with, how to set up a counter gank, and what to do when you have a lead on the opponent. We'll also be teaching you something very important to know when junglers start on the same side of the map, along with a variety of new tactics you haven't heard before. All of these things and more will be taught using a challenger replay from the pro player Jankos. For those of you who don't know, Jankos is the jungler for the European team G2, who made it to the semifinals of the World Championship. Alright, we've got some great stuff to cover, so let's jump straight into it. In this game, Jankos is playing Gragas and the enemy is playing Elise. He starts by getting a leash at his blue. Some of you may be wondering why he decided to start at blue instead of red. When deciding which side of the map to start on, we're mainly looking at two things. Firstly, how does having a side laner leash affect their matchup? And secondly, are any of the matchups volatile or snowbally? If we look at this game, the top lane matchup is Sion against Alawi, and the bot lane matchup is Ezreal Vel'Koz against Kai'Sa Alistar. Let's try answering the first question. Which matchup do you think would be most impacted by having to leash? The answer is bot lane. Ezreal Vel'Koz has a tremendous amount of poke early on, which is exactly when Alistar and Kai'Sa are weak. By letting them get to lane early, they have potential to secure level 2 first and push this advantage. Now let's answer the second question, are any of the matchups volatile or snowbally? Let's look at top lane first. Sion is considered to be a really stable champion. You don't pick him to stomp lane, instead he's more of a safe pick. An example of a volatile top lane matchup would be Pantheon against Darius. Neither champion has an escape, and once one gets a lead, it's difficult for the other to come back. In short, the Sion matchup is low priority. If there's free kills, great, but bot lane has potential to overwhelm the enemy with poke, take the tower, into rotating around the map. As Jankos does blue, he sees the enemy bot arrive early to lane. This indicates that they didn't leash and that the enemy jungler started red. This creates a unique situation where both junglers are starting on the same side of the map. In the current meta, junglers like to start at their red buffs. The red buff gives a slow and additional damage, which can help them win early fights over scuttles. At the same time, it unlocks the early level 3 routes, where you take Krugs, which we've covered in recent videos. For this reason, a lot of the time, junglers will be starting opposite to each other. By doing this, it encourages a certain style of play. For example, it allows you to have a direct line of attack on the enemy's blue buff. It also lets you take camps, like Krugs and Raptors, as stalling moves, where you wait to see which scuttle the enemy is going for and then commit to the opposite one. This results in a prevalence of vertical jungling, where both junglers invade each other's blue buffs and split the map in half. However, when two junglers start on the same side of the map, vertical jungling no longer becomes an option. For example, let's say in this position, Elise does red into Krugs into scuttle, and Gragas does blue into wolves into red. In this situation, if Gragas ganks bot, there's nothing Elise can do about it. At the same time, if Elise were to gank mid, Gragas is in position to respond. Now, some of you may be thinking that Elise can gank top and there's nothing Gragas can do about it, resulting in an equal position and vertical jungling. The problem is that Gragas can steal her blue as a response, whereas Elise can't since Gragas already took his blue. This is why vertical jungling isn't an option when you start on the same side of the map. Instead, you're forced into a race towards the opposite side. So if we jump back into the replay, we now know Jankos not only is starting blue to help his bot lane, but that since Elise started red, he's now in a race towards the bot side of the map. After he does blue, he begins his wolves. This may seem a bit strange that he doesn't skip wolves, since he's supposed to be rushing towards the bot side of the map. This has to do with the fact that Gragas really needs level 3 to gank or fight. At the same time, Elise has the stronger level 2 1v1. By taking wolves, we can then do red into hitting level 3 off the following camp. This leaves us versatile, since we can choose to either do Raptors or Krugs after red, depending on which lane we want to be close to. After doing wolves, Gragas then heads to his red buff. At this point, the next camp he chooses to take will give Jankos level 3, so he has to decide between Raptors or Krugs. Which would you choose? The answer is Krugs. This is because Aurelia is recalling mid, so we don't need to be close to that lane. Instead, our bot lane is pushed up and vulnerable to being ganked. We know Elise started at red and is racing towards the bot side just like us. By doing Krugs, we'll position ourselves to potentially counter gank while still securing the much needed level 3 power spike. Now this is when Jankos does a technique that a lot of low elo players don't utilize. On the minimap, he sees Alistar engage and immediately peels off his Krugs to respond. Alistar initiating is a huge red flag that a gank is about to occur, since we know Elise is on this side of the map. Most players wouldn't catch this and instead would only react once they actually saw Elise. Sure enough, we saw her ganking and are in position to counter. By reacting early when Alistar engaged, Jankos is able to save Vel'Koz from dying and secure 2 kills. He then helps bot push out the lane. This was a strong opener that secured both him and his bot lane a lead, but Jankos is now in a position where he has to figure out how he can push this advantage. If we look back earlier, we can see Elise escaped with almost no health. If we look at the minimap, what do you think Gragas should do? Some of you might be thinking that he should attack Elise's Gromp and Wolves. This is tempting since we know Elise is low in health and likely couldn't contest. While this is true, this is a common trap people fall victim to. He just finished killing the enemy bot lane, and as a result, his own bot lane will want to recall. At the same time, death timers are extremely low at this point in the game. If he were to invade, then the enemy Alistar and Kai'Sa could respond, while his Ezreal and Vel'Koz would be too far away, resulting in him throwing his lead. Instead, there are 3 things that Jankos is looking to do to push his advantage. First is to take away the nearby scuttle. This is because it's something Elise can use to gain gold and experience while also healing. Second is a possible gank mid since Akali is overextended. Gragas knows that Elise is in no position to counter gank given her low health. This will also secure priority for Aurelia, which will help execute the next goal. Lastly is the enemy Raptor camp. Elise's low health means she would be in no position to contest, and it would be too risky for her to steal Gragas' Raptors as a response. This is because mid will likely have priority from our gank, and our bot lane would be walking back to lane and in position to respond. So Gragas takes Scuttle next, while moving towards mid lane in preparation for a gank. It's important to note that this is what people refer to as a transition gank. Jankos' main goal is to steal the enemy's Raptors. Moving through mid is just the fastest way of getting there. Transition ganks are extremely popular amongst strong level 2 junglers like Xin Zhao or Camille, who often do red buff into Scuttle and then execute a transition gank mid to then take the other Scuttle. Essentially, Jankos would move through mid regardless of whether Akali was overextended. This is what makes it a transition gank. Nevertheless, he's still able to run down Akali with the help of Aurelia and secure the kill. Elise shows up in an attempt to help, but her low health makes her unable to do anything. With priority secured mid and the health and level advantage he has over Elise, he's able to easily steal the Raptors. This pushes Elise back to the bot side of the map and essentially blocks her from accessing the top side. He chooses to clear the entire camp instead of leaving one small Raptor alive. This is because he has a big lead right now, and by full clearing the camp, he can get a timer on it. I'm sure as many of you know, monster camps respawn every 2 minutes and 30 seconds. This means around 6 minutes and 40 seconds, Gragas can look to steal them again. This isn't something he's specifically aiming to do, instead it's an option he's keeping open. He'll be paying attention to whether Aurelia will be snowballing her lead. If she is, Gragas can then play around her. Stealing the enemy's Raptors on respawn can be a strong tactic in order to hover around your mid lane, protecting them while still farming efficiently. After taking the Raptors, he begins to move towards the enemy Krug camp, looking to steal that too. He's able to do this safely and not have to prioritize taking the Scuttle since he's pushed Elise to the bot side of the map. Unfortunately, the Krugs haven't spawned yet, but there is a gank available on Alawi. With the help of Sion, he secures the kill and now has successfully ganked every lane, counter-jungled the enemy, and denied both Scuttles from Elise. Alright, this was really impressive by Jankos, so let's recap how he did this. To start, he identified that his bot was the most important side lane to play around. For this reason, he starts topside so they don't have to leash him. He also notices that the enemy bot didn't leash, so he knows Elise started red. This means that both junglers are starting on the same side of the map. When junglers start on the same side of the map, vertical jungling is no longer viable. Instead, it's a race to the other side. However, the problem is Elise has a much stronger level 2, and Gragas relies on being level 3 to fight. For this reason, he does blue into wolves into red, allowing him to pivot to either raptors or krugs to hit level 3, while staying near the lane he thinks is most likely to be ganked. In this case, mid recalled and his bot lane was pushed up. He peeled off krugs early on as soon as Alistar engaged, which tipped him off that Elise was ganking. This few second difference allowed him to save Vel'Koz, secure 2 kills, and put Elise on low health. After this, he knew not to invade Elise's Gromp or wolves, since the enemy bot lane would respawn so quickly while his bot lane would be recalling. Instead, he secures the scuttle to deny the healing from Elise. At the same time, he executed a transition gank on mid lane to secure priority there in order to invade Elise's raptors. By doing this, he blocked Elise from the top side of the map, where he looked to steal the enemy's krugs and successfully gank top. We hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, good luck and have fun on Summoner's Rift.